All right, so we've been using functions a lot so far. We've had function libraries and we've done different things with different kinds of functions. We've also talked about the fact that int main with the parentheses is itself a function, and it's actually a special function because it's what's reserved for the main body of the program. So with a function, you have to, if you're doing anything in life, you have to maybe sort of figure out the details. My children are 2 and 4 at the moment, and they're figuring out this whole process of how they're supposed to brush their teeth. And it's kind of this agonizing process where they don't do it right and they forget steps, and it's, kind of a headache. But, with us, by the time we're adults, you can kind of do it without batting an eye. It requires no thought, and you can kind of then move on to other things. And so instead of thinking of the act of toothbrushing as a series of distinct steps, like get the toothbrush, get the bristles wet, unscrew the cap of the toothpaste, squirt the toothpaste on so you don't make the ginormous mess, which is happening a lot, just saying. And then you put the cap back on, and then you put the toothbrush in your mouth, and you brush like here, there, and instead of having all of those every last individual discrete step, you can have an entire process of just brush teeth, and you just go, you do it, you make it happen, and you're done. Or it's like drive to work. At this point, I don't have to think about all the distinct steps of, take this turn, merge onto this highway, go here, turn here, go this other place. It's sort of a singular action. And that's the concept of a function, where we know how to perform the task. We don't have to think about the details. We can just sort of do the task in its entirety. And whenever we want to call the function brush teeth or go to Maryville, like, we can just do it without almost a second thought. So a function is sort of a black box. We call the function. Sometimes we have to give the function arguments so it knows, like, it may have something to do, but it may need an object to do it with. A mathematical example might be a square root function. It can do the process of square rooting things, but we do have to provide something to find the square root of. And then often functions will generate an output, which is called the return value. So in this case, what we have for this function right here, we're going to include the IO stream. We're going to include CMath with the namespace as usual. CMath gives us access to the square root functions. We're going to do cout, and we're going to do square root of 2.0, and it'll tell me what the square root of 2 is. And that happens to be the number 1.41421. So we're calling a function, and what happens with a lot of functions is you pass an argument into the function. And then from a mathematical standpoint, you have a function that does something, so you put a number into the function and see what it gives you. So how it works is kind of a mystery. It takes an argument and it spits something back out. With programming, a lot of times you don't necessarily care what the gory details are of how this function was designed, and who built it and how exactly. Usually you just want a function that works. You can do what you need to do with it and just move on. So the function is independent of how it's applied. And so there's two big purposes of a function. You can separate ideas. A big thing in computer programming is trying to conceptually separate different ideas, different tasks. And then especially if you've got like a team of people building a big task, like, I don't know, a all-out video game, the people who are in charge of the graphics don't necessarily need to know all the stuff about what the people who are doing all the sound effects are doing. and the people who do the sound effects don't have to worry about kind of the architecture of like how the game moves through its plot, for instance. And so you have separated ideas, you know, if the graphics people can figure out how to like zoom in and zoom out, the sound people can figure out how dialogue and sound effects will work, and then the plot line, you know, if you do an action, it'll take the story this way. If you do another action and like are a total jerk to all the characters, it's going to send the plot off like somewhere else. It also allows you to avoid repeating yourself with your code. If you're going to do something a lot over and over again, it would be nice not to have to include those lines of code repeatedly if you're doing essentially the same task over and over again.